This is americasdemocrats.org, the weekly netcast for stand-up Democrats. I'm your host, Jim Cuddy. Internet Explorer and AOL are the latest institutions hacked by computer villains. Privacy expert Peter Singer tells us how to protect ourselves. Democratic strategist Ed Kilgore advises progressives to talk less about programs and more about values. And Bill Press talks with Wisconsin Congresswoman Gwen Moore. Are you tired of Tea Party Republicans and Rush Limbaugh dominating the airwaves? Do you want the facts you won't get on Fox or even on CNN? Then stay tuned. Our sponsor, 21st Century Democrats, works hard to get everyday Democrats involved in returning our party to its roots and to success at the ballot box. Sit back and listen, then stand up and fight. And follow 21st Century Democrats on Facebook for all the latest progressive news. We're glad you can join us. With Internet Explorer and AOL, the latest victims of hacking, privacy expert Peter Singer reveals the biggest threat, our own ignorance. And we welcome Peter W. Singer, an expert on the Internet, privacy, and national security. He's the director of the Center for 21st Century Security and Intelligence at the Brookings Institution and a senior fellow in the Foreign Policy Program. Also the co-author of a new book called Cybersecurity and Cyber War, What Everyone Needs to Know. Peter Singer, thanks so much for joining us today on americasdemocrats.org.
Thank you for having me.
You know, and, it seems a day doesn't go by when a cybersecurity issue is not on the front pages, from Edward Snowden to the hacking of Target customer accounts to authoritarian governments shutting down social media sites. What do you see as the biggest threat?
The biggest threat is our own ignorance. And I say that in what connects these various episodes, whether you're talking about, those strange new charges on your Target credit card, or you're talking about something bigger, the, issues with the NSA or Snowden or whatnot, is that what links all of these together is someone taking advantage of a general level of ignorance on cyber issues. It's that hacker tricking you into clicking on a link that you really ought not to. It's that hacker getting into a website because the password you use is the most popular password out there, 12345, or no, you're using something even better, the second most popular password, or the fact that we reuse passwords on all our different accounts so that if they get one, then they can daisy chain across all of them. And this, can be in your household, but it's also something that happens at the grand political level, at the G20 conference, the most important conference of the year on the global level. Diplomats were what they call spearphished. They received emails with an incredible offer. If they clicked a link, they would be able to see nude photos of the French First Lady. They clicked it, and unfortunately, they didn't get their photos. They downloaded spyware into their computers. So, this ignorance can happen at the individual level and affect people large and small, so to speak. Ignorance can happen in being taken advantage of at the business or organizational level, where companies either don't do enough on real threats or they're taken in by hucksters who promise 100% security, promise, some kind of silver bullet software or hardware widget to solve all of their problems. When really this is there's a technical side, but you're never going to get 100% security. You have to approach it as a management issue. So you see that, and then frankly, taking advantage of at the national political level, which is, I again think, has driven a number of these controversies out there. Reportedly, for example, President Obama expressed his the way they put it was frustration that the pace of the technology was going faster than their understanding of it.
Yikes. How did the history?
And that's to be blunt, that's the driver for this project, for this book, is to try and change it from being something that people see as not their concern and not their understanding, and instead say, no, here's the basics of it, here's how it all works, here's why it all matters, and here's what we can do. and come at it in an interesting way rather than the either incredibly dry or too often kind of histrionic way that people approach it, and say, no, there's ways to understand it. And, oh, by the way, there's interesting stories and characters to tell. So, if you want to understand how the internet works, we begin with a story of how Pakistan accidentally kidnapped all the world's cute cat videos for a couple of hours, and illustrate how the internet works with that story.
Mm-hmm. Allowing you to stay ahead of it rather than playing catch up too. So, how did the history of the internet's formation shape its security concerns today?
It's interesting because the internet itself starts as a Defense Department funded project. It's not as too often. There's a lot of myths, and we go into this in the book of what's the real history of the internet. It's not about creating a secret communication system if there's a nuclear attack. It's basically about figuring out how to not just merely share information, but share computing time back in the day, which was a really crucial thing. And so it starts funded by that. But what's more important than its core funding is the people involved. It's a group of mostly Northern California computer scientists, university-based in the late 1960s and then early 1970s. And so it reflects their approach, their mentality, their values, and it's very much a system driven by openness and trust, and that's why it's so successful. That's why it drives so much economic, political, and social change. That's why everyone wants to go online, is that ability. What that means, though, is that there's certain vulnerabilities woven into it, but also this openness means that you can react to those vulnerabilities much better than if it was a closed system. It also means that as we're seeing a shift of more and more people come online from very different parts of the world, those old values, there's a sort of a debate going on as to whether will you have to change the internet to reflect this different set of values, or is it will the internet change them, so to speak? That's why they want to come online, is to experience all of this openness and sharing. It also finally means that when you hear some of these solutions that are put out there, like, oh, you know what? They didn't take security in mind when they built the internet, so we should build a new, more secure internet. It's one of those things that sounds really nice in a congressional hearing room, but actually makes no sense and just simply is not doable. It's not going to happen, and instead we need to deal with the cards that we've been dealt, because it's a pretty great hand. The internet is a wonderful thing, and we need to figure out instead how to better manage our security on it, because there will be threats for as long as we use it.
We're speaking with Peter Singer, expert on the internet, privacy, national security. He's also the co-author of the new book called Cybersecurity and Cyber War, What Everyone Needs to Know, which is the topic of our discussion today. If you want to check it out, there's a website, cybersecuritybook.com. That's cybersecuritybook.com. So who matters more to the internet's future, states or individuals?
Ooh, great question.
For the first time in this interview, we've stumped you.
Well, because I'm going to do a horrible thing and say both. It reflects the internet itself. The users range from state government agencies to individuals, and on one hand, it's empowered individuals to do things in ways that they could never before, and to escape certain state controls. And you can see those stories, and everything from Anonymous and groups like Pirates Bay, et cetera, that have kept ahead of attempts at state control and restrictions, to the wonderful stories of varieties of human rights activists and groups, and it drives actions like the Arab Spring. On the other hand, this is not a realm where states don't matter, as it's too often expressed. States have great responsibility in this space because of our overwhelming dependence on cyber for our communications, our commerce, our infrastructure. So if a state's doing its job of securing its citizens, it has to care about what's going on in cyberspace. And second, the state still has teeth. It still has teeth, whether you're talking about its ability to create cyber power, the more than 100 cyber military commands that are out there that can do things that many non-state collectives can't. So an example would be Stuxnet, the first true cyber weapon that was developed by the U.S. government in combination with the Israeli government. This is not something that a couple of teenagers in their parents' basement could pull off, as too often these things are expressed. But also people, the users of the Internet, and all the hardware that they depend on, even in an age of cloud computing, there's still things, physical things that matter, and physical things have to be placed within state sovereign borders. So it's much like the Internet itself. Both matter, and you're never going to be able to escape that duality.
How can we build a safer cyber world?
We have to recognize our collective responsibility, and secondly, that making the cyber world and in turn the rest of the real world beyond it safer depends not merely on the hardware or the software, but fundamentally on the wetware, on the people. And so when I say collective responsibility, I like to talk about the parallel of public health. So as an example, if you're trying to learn from what should be government action in this space, well, why not look at the most successful government agencies in history and try and draw from them? So in the book, for example, we look at the rise of the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control. I would argue one of the most successful government agencies in all of human history. Starts out with it's a great story in the book. Of a couple of scientists taking a collection for $10 so they can buy some real estate down in Georgia, and this government agency goes on to do everything from eradicate malaria inside the United States to smallpox on a global level. Oh, by the way, it also serves as a crucial back channel to the Soviets during the Cold War. And so one of the things that's interesting is that the CDC studies found that Ben Franklin's saying about an ounce of prevention being worth a pound of cure actually turned out to be true. The public health studies show that it's true. It's also true when you look at the cyber side. And these preventative measures can go a long way, and much like in public health, very basic hygiene is crucial. So it was found, for example, that in one study, 94% of all cyber attacks would be stopped by a set of procedures known as the top 20 controls. And this extends from whether you're talking about organizations down to the very basic steps of cyber hygiene that individuals should be following. Strong passwords, having very different passwords, not taking candy from strangers, which is the equivalent of not taking hardware from someone that you don't know. That memory stick at the conference you were at in Dubai, it's so shiny and cool. Sorry, don't plug it in. To not clicking on links from people that you don't know. There's a whole series of these sort of things that are very basic, and they would go an incredibly long way. But the notion of hygiene is important not just because of protecting yourself, but also about a sense of responsibility. We teach our kids to wash their hands, cover their mouth when they cough. Again, not just because it's the best way to keep them safe, but also it teaches them that they've got a responsibility for everyone else that they connect with during the day. We need that same mentality, that same approach when it comes to our cyber behavior. And again, that's the mentality you want at the individual level, but also when you're setting national policy and even global policy. Prevention. Also, you need the other areas out there that you would have in public health of research and development and et cetera. But it's a layered approach we need to come at it.
Okay. Peter Singer, again, the director of the Center for 21st Century Security and Intelligence at the Brookings Institution, co-author of the new book called Cybersecurity and Cyber War, What Everyone Needs to Know. You can check it out, www.cybersecuritybook.com. Peter, thank you so much for your time with us today on americasdemocrats.org. I have a feeling we're going to have you back and talk some more about this.
I appreciate you having me. Take care.
All right, you as well. And this is americasdemocrats.org, the weekly netcast for Stand Up Democrats. We want you to sit back and listen, but we need you to stand up and fight. Do you want to get involved and help get our party back to its roots and to success at the ballot box? You can make your contribution to Democrats for America's Future and help us keep this show going and to elect Democrats who will stand up for democratic principles. Go to americasdemocrats.org and click on Donate at the top of the page. This is americasdemocrats.org, the weekly netcast for Stand Up Democrats. Political strategist Ed Kilgore says Democrats need a more compelling narrative to advance a progressive agenda. And we'll talk to him about that in just a moment. Right now, we turn to Jim Hightower, America's #1 populist, for his common sense commentary.
They're back. They're rested. They're ready. Our Congress critters, that is. They've returned to their workplace after enjoying a badly needed 2-week Easter vacation. After all, it had been a full 4 weeks since their last vacation in March. And meanwhile, they'd been doing a lot of heavy lifting. You know, passing a jobs bill, raising the minimum wage, and extending long-term unemployment benefits for millions of desperate folks who've been unable to find jobs. Yes, sirree, our legislative leaders have been working like mules to strengthen America's hard-hit middle class. Oh, wait, my mistake. They haven't passed any of that stuff. In fact, the GOP House, along with the Republicans in the Senate, have been working overtime to kill any bills to lift up America's workaday families. Still, as you might imagine, killing bills can plumb tucker you out. So those lawmakers, or in this case, law killers, undoubtedly needed a break. Sure enough, now that they're back at the congressional grindstone, they seem full of pep, ready to say no again and again. Only a week after returning, for example, Senate GOP leader Mitch McConnell rose up on his hind legs, mustered a burst of negative energy, and zapped dead a Democratic proposal to hike America's minimum wage. As a result of Mitch's legislative labor of love, millions of hardworking people will remain stuck in poverty-wage jobs for the foreseeable future. Who benefits from such a Dickensian effort? McDonald's, Domino's Pizza, Taco Bell, and other multi-billion-dollar giants that profit by holding down their own workers. This is Jim Hightower saying, the widening chasm of income inequality in our land of opportunity is no accident. It exists, and it grows worse by political design. Americans would be better off if those designing lawmakers just stayed on vacation.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
This is americasdemocrats.org, the weekly netcast for Stand Up Democrats. Ed Kilgore is a Democratic strategist whose message is fairly straightforward. Talk less about government programs and more about values. And we welcome to the program Ed Kilgore, who's managing editor of the Democratic Strategist, also principal blogger at the Washington Monthly's Political Animal blog, and he was co-moderator of the forum along with American Prospects Kit Rackless. He also has an extensive background in political analysis and communications and public policy at the federal and state levels and in the Washington think tank world. Ed Kilgore, thanks so much for joining us today on americasdemocrats.org.
Glad to.
You know, one of the big issues with social insurance programs, especially Social Security, is something called intergenerational equity. What responsibility does the younger generation have to the older generation, especially when times are this tough for the young and when there are many fewer young workers than in the past?
Well, I don't think they have any more or less responsibility than past generations have had, since Social Security is designed to be a program in which current workers do, in part, finance benefits for retirees. So we do have to remember that retirees have obviously contributed through their own payroll taxes. The question kind of bugs me because the assumption there is that because of the declining ratio of workers to retirees, we're going to be asking more from the next generation than we have from the past. That's a little bit inaccurate. The only payroll tax increase anyone has that I know of has discussed associated with Social Security is to lift the cap on the maximum amount of earned income that's exposed to the payroll tax, which is something progressives have been pushing for many, many years. It's not going to increase rates for the next generation of workers. It's not going to add any of them to the Social Security payroll tax roll. So the premise behind this idea that continuing Social Security as it is, more or less, violates intergenerational equity is that the program's about to go bust, and it's really not. That's actually conservative propaganda that that we really need to get over. So I really don't think the idea is demanding more of the next generation than the last. And there are also ways to improve Social Security solvency without imposing more on payroll taxes for current workers.
Is the issue of how to deal with budget pressure on the social safety net a struggle for the soul of the progressive movement?
I don't think so. I think it's more a struggle for the mind. I think virtually all progressives are committed to the continuation of the safety net in ways that most conservatives are not. Much of the argument revolves around two things. One, the idea that's particularly popular among some people on the left, that if you touch any Social Security benefits, say for high-income beneficiaries, if you somehow expose their benefits to lower cost of living adjustments or higher taxes or anything else you're violating, it ceases to be a universal benefit and becomes another means-tested program, and that weakens its political viability. That's a pretty circuitous argument. Frankly, I consider it a tad immoral. And in any event, Social Security is already means-tested. So the question is not whether to means-test Social Security, it's how much. So the second argument you hear is really one between the importance of the safety net and competing domestic priorities, which particularly non-defense discretionary spending. The argument being that if we have a limited number of resources, what should they go to? I think where you have a lot of common ground is that most progressives think that long-term retirement spending, primarily for Medicare, can be significantly reduced through health care reform, and that will get us out of that trap where retirement programs are pitted against non-defense discretionary spending. So that's why I say it's more of a struggle of the mind, is how to negotiate this particular era where there's constant budgetary pressure on both kinds of domestic spending.
We're speaking with Ed Kilgore, managing editor of the Democratic Strategist. Ed, why do so many Americans see the federal government as ineffective when it's so clearly lifted generations out of poverty, won a world war, sent servicemen and women to college, and built a strong middle class?
Well, I think there are a couple things going on. One is there really is, and this to me is one of the few true arguments of American exceptionalism. There's simply a tradition of anti-statism in this country that's bigger than you'll find in virtually any other advanced society. And even though many Americans operationally are liberal in supporting particular government programs, they're hostile to the government as a whole. I think progressives just need to accept that as a basic reality we have to work through. The second thing that's a little more invidious is that a lot of Americans do not think of Social Security and Medicare as government programs. They think of them as earned benefits that they are paying for and that come to them automatically. The government's role in this program is something that we've kind of lost a sense of. I mean, hence the famous joke of some anonymous person yelling, get the government out of my Medicare.
Right.
So I really think we have to reconnect a historical understanding of popular benefits as the product of federal activism to help rehabilitate the reputation of the federal government. And I think it's also important for progressives to try to find ways to make government more responsive, effective, and efficient, not because conservatives are demanding it, but because if you want more government, you need better government.
Mm-hmm. Should progressives even bother trying to explain to the American people that our social insurance programs are nothing compared to other big democracies and way lower in relative terms to what we used to provide here in the U.S.?
I think the second point we need to mention all the time. Comparing us to other countries, I think, really only makes sense when conservatives are making the argument that we're creating some sort of monstrous welfare state that's not compatible with capitalism or with economic growth. I think it is important frequently to point out that an awful lot of countries have as much prosperity as we do and as much freedom with significantly higher social benefits.
You know, one of the interesting issues raised in your magazine's forum, which was Washington Monthly and a collaboration with American Prospect, and you were co-moderator along with Kit Rackless, is the utter incoherence of American public opinion on budget and deficit issues. They want deep spending cuts, but want the programs that cost money. Are they just stupid, or are they psychologically conditioned to believe certain myths?
I would avoid the word stupid. I don't think it's a measure of intelligence to be able to navigate the complexities of the federal budget, much less programs like Social Security and Medicare. People spend years studying these programs without necessarily being very coherent. But there is a big information gap. There's no question about it. And, you know, I've always thought that progressives need to talk less about programs, more about values and big policy goals that the programs implement to connect with the basic sentiments of the American people. Frankly, the message that a lot of people hear when Democrats get down in the weeds of programs is, you know, I'm here from the government and I want to help you. And, you know, I really think reconnecting individual government programs that are popular with the historical conditions that created it and the widely shared policy goals that they're intended to achieve would help a great deal.
You know, one suggestion is for progressives to start using simple language and compare our policies with those of conservatives. That seems like a good idea. Do you think that could work? And what else can be done to win the battle of ideas?
Well, I'm a big believer in comparative political messaging. I think one of the very difficult things for progressives right now is that ultimate conservative policy goals are so often disguised in incremental steps towards very radical goals. Exposing what Republicans actually believe and want is extraordinarily important for progressives right now and probably for the foreseeable future. I think certainly simplifying progressive language is important, particularly just as I mentioned a moment ago, by a careful presentation of values that most Americans share, big policy goals that most Americans share, and only then move to the point of advocacy on individual programs. I think that creates a much more compelling narrative for defending and advancing progressive agendas.
Okay. Ed Kilgore, managing editor of the Democratic Strategist, also principal blogger at the Washington Monthly's Political Animal blog. Ed, as always, we appreciate your time with us today on americasdemocrats.org and hope we can have you back again soon.
Anytime.
Thank you very much. And this is americasdemocrats.org, the weekly netcast for Stand Up Democrats. We want you to sit back and listen, but we need you to stand up and fight. Help get our party back to its roots and to success at the ballot box. Make your contribution to Democrats for America's Future to keep this show on the air and help elect stand-up Democrats. Go to americasdemocrats.org and click on Donate at the top of the page. This is americasdemocrats.org, the weekly netcast for stand-up Democrats. And now Bill Press and his guests, Congresswoman Gwen Moore and the National Journal's Matt Vasilogambros.
Born in Wisconsin and representing the 4th District of Wisconsin in the United States Congress, Congresswoman Gwen Moore. Great to see you, Congresswoman.
It is so wonderful being with you again. It's been a few years.
I know it has.
Glad you got back to me in your Rolodex.
No. Anytime. And you know, one thing nice about being this close, right here, close to the Capitol, is people just stop by on your way to work, you know. Stop by, have a cup of coffee with us every morning.
I'll take you up on that.
All right. And Matt Vasilogambros is here from the National Journal, as we call him a friend of Bill here for this hour, Congresswoman. So let me ask you, the big news is, and we have all of our listeners out at 92.1, the mic in Madison, one of our great affiliates out there. Are we going to get rid of Scott Walker?
You know what? This is my passion, my burning desire. I think we have a really good shot at this. For a guy,
great candidate,
right? We got a great candidate, and for a guy whose bragging rights are that he's won 2 elections in 4 years, he's never been able to top 48%. He's underwater, and the latest poll shows he's about 48, 42, basically unknown candidate. We haven't really, introduced Mary Burke yet to folks. She hasn't started any commercials and big mailings, and yet, the desire to have someone new is really, really present. And so we think, it was one thing to sort of piss off organized labor, but Scott Walker has gone on to piss off everyone. I mean, we've got the transvaginal probe. And
I thought that was in Virginia. No,
that's in Wisconsin as well. He cut, hundreds of millions of dollars out of K-12 education, out of technical college education, our flagship University of Wisconsin system. So it wasn't enough to just deep six the teachers. You had to pull the money out of schools. He's this voucher program. He spread it statewide, and some people aren't happy about that. He didn't take the Medicaid money. I mean, 100% payment. The hospitals aren't happy about that, much less poor folk. I could just go on. And economic development to 250,000 jobs, not even close. Turned down $800 million for the train, and this guy is he's very vulnerable.
Wisconsin deserves, with the proud tradition of Wisconsin, deserves a lot better, right, than a Scott Walker. I mean, the progressive movement started, in the state of Wisconsin. So I didn't realize he's one of the governors. And Matt, I don't understand this with Medicaid, right? John Kasich, Republican, had enough sense to say, if the federal government's going to give me 100% and pay for 100% to have my poorest of citizens who need Medicaid get it, right? Damn right I'm going to sign up for that program, because it makes all kinds of sense. I didn't realize Scott Walker was one of the governors who turned it down.
Oh, absolutely. Totally ideological. I'd like to hear from Matt. I mean, what do you think of that?
Well, I mean, I don't have an opinion on them.
He's a reporter, but
you don't have an opinion. Well, here's the thing. I served on the Joint Committee on Finance when I was in the state legislature. Right now, the formula in Wisconsin for Medicaid is that it's a 60-40 formula. Feds pay 60 cents on a dollar, and the state kicks in 40 cents.
Yeah.
So he's got a 60-40 formula instead of the 100%. Mm-hmm. And even after 3 years, when the Fed share is reduced to only 90 cents.
90 cents, yeah.
Come on now.
It's still a better deal than today, 60-40.
I mean, come on, just get, are you smarter than a fourth grader, a third grader, whatever the program is?
Yeah, basic math would tell you that. There's so much to talk about. Matt and I were talking a little bit earlier, Congresswoman, about the vote on the minimum wage yesterday in the Senate. So I did a little math this morning, right? Members of the Senate make $175,000 a year. That's $85.13 an hour.
To do nothing.
Amen, right, to do nothing. And they're faced with a choice about raising the minimum wage for your lowest scale worker from $7.25 an hour to $10.10 an hour, which would enable them to make $21,000 a year. And these $175,000 senators won't even give the minimum wage people that. I mean, it's just cruel.
Well, really, some of the talk behind the scenes, and not so much behind the scenes, is that you really have chambers of commerce and businesses saying that they don't have any problem with raising the minimum wage. Because think about it, the biggest part of our economy is consumption. 70% of our economy are consumers. So you see so many businesses with trillions of dollars on the side because there's not demand. Someone making $15,000 a year on minimum wage cannot afford to go to Best Buy and buy stuff. People will shop when they have money. They can't afford to go out and have pizza night with their kids. They're not consuming, and that is the big problem. If you raise the minimum wage, people will instantly start putting it back into the economy.
You just made that point in our last segment, right? This gets to your point about savings.
It does. I mean, there's not enough money out there for these for most Americans to even put slight, amounts of savings to the side. They want to save some money. They also do want to spend and make it, but they're not making enough money to even do so. I want to ask the Congresswoman, during this whole debate, there have been a few members who have gone off topic and say, Americans don't make enough with the minimum wage. Neither do members of Congress. I don't want to change the subject too much, but I have heard some members say that members should have a raise. I was wondering if you're under the same mindset.
Retiring members who have said that?
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
It was,
I doubt people who are running for re-election are going to say that.
Well, just let me say this. All members are not equal. Many members are very wealthy. They're millionaires. And I consider it a real privilege to serve. One of the shocking things about serving that I found is that I get a $3,000 a year deduction for my expenses. So while I pay a couple $1,000s a month for rent, I don't sleep on my couch and in my office like some members do. While I pay $25,000, that comes right off the top of my salary. So I have to maintain an apartment here and one at home, and I am a person that I don't have any means. And so that is, and that is the price that I pay for the privilege of serving.
But there are also, not all members are equal. You're absolutely right. Not all members put in a full day's work either, to be honest, Congresswoman. Right, I know you do, and I know
it's exhausting doing nothing. It really is, and I think my days often are 14, 15-hour days. That's a typical day. It's a day that you have to travel, and then when we go back to our districts, we show up on Saturdays, Sundays. I think that most members get a really bad rap. Typically I work 7 days a week. And sometimes I just scream uncle when it's the third and fourth week in a row when I have had no days off.
There is probably a misconception that recess is a time of vacation. It's a time of going back to the district, actually meeting the constituents that you represent.
You're talking about the third or fourth day in a row, and also the third or fourth event.
No, for a third or fourth week in a row with no break whatsoever.
No break. And then 3 or 4 events at least in a day, right? Or an evening that you've got to get to.
And, it's helpful when you really like to meet your constituents. I mean, I really like people, but reality is that it's exhausting.
Now, so the minimum wage didn't even get to the floor. Well, won't even get to the floor unless some Republicans change their mind. But the Senate was able to get together and vote to extend unemployment insurance for long-term unemployed, and it's over in the House right now. Where does it sit?
Once again, people can be stuck on stupid, waiting on dumb to come if they want to. Unemployment insurance it's money that the economy is being deprived of. These folks are long-term unemployed for a variety of reasons. Again, businesses are not hiring because they don't have the demand. When they don't have the demand, there aren't jobs. I know one of my senators in my state, Senator Johnson, says that it's because people are basically gaming the system and they don't want to work and it creates a disincentive when you provide unemployment insurance. But that is absolutely not the case. I've got so many stories in my district, people who have been unemployed and they have, they're 50 years old, and so it's not easy.
And they're out there trying to get a job.
And they're out trying to get a job.
Right. Yeah. And if Speaker Boehner were to bring that to a vote, is there any doubt in your mind that
there's no doubt in my mind that it would pass? But they've got
with Republican votes.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and there it is. Same thing with
because unemployment is just not partisan. They're unemployed Republicans.
Believe it or I know. Believe it or not, there are some unemployed Republicans, and there are people working on the minimum wage, and would love to see a minimum wage increase in the red states too, right,
That's
Congresswoman?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Congresswoman Gwen Moore from the 4th District of Wisconsin, here in the studio with us, and Matt Vasily-Gambros from the National Journal. Honored to be joined by the Congresswoman from the 4th District of Wisconsin, Congresswoman Gwen Moore. Congresswoman Barbara Lee, your colleague, was here in studio with us yesterday. And when the news broke that Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel has said he's going to review the rules and regulations regarding hairstyles of African-American women in the military. There's an op-ed about it in the New York Times this morning. This all happened because of a letter that you and your female colleagues in the Black Caucus, Congressional Black Caucus, signed and sent to the Defense Secretary. What's this all about? Why is it important?
Hair has always been a sensitive issue with women of any color or creed.
Yeah.
But in the black community, there's always this notion of good hair and bad hair. And I think for many, many years, African Americans have gone out of their way to try to have hairstyles that emulate European hair. And it's a pain. And it's a pain to do. And it is so easy, and as busy as we are, mm-hmm. and people in the military, it is hard to maintain a European style hairdo.
Well, why should
you
have to?
It's so much easier to twist it or to lock it, like my hair is twisted. Yeah. And it's just get up, get in the shower. This is what every woman, no matter what race she is, wants. She wants a hairdo where she can get up and go. Mm-hmm. Whether it's to grab it up in a ponytail, get out of the shower and keep moving. And so when you start talking about the inability to twist your hair, you start messing in black women's hair. Our hair is already twisted, and so we twist it a little bit more so that it's manageable.
Yeah. So don't make you untwist it. Yeah.
That's right. Don't get it. Don't get this twisted. This is our hair.
Current rules ban things like cornrows, braids, twist, or dreadlocks. Well, at least the secretary, he responded, which is good news. He's going to review all the regulations
right away.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So good for you raising that issue.
Yeah, that was a very interesting issue. I mean, I saw that come up a little while ago, and there was a lot of outrage out there, especially in the black community. So
the other thing you've been talking about.
And we've been tortured with this for years. Because, women in the corporate world, couldn't wear their hair twisted or locked. And I mean, can you imagine just getting up every day trying to straighten your hair? I can tell you, my hairdresser, who every 2 weeks straightened my hair, saw me the other week, mm-hmm. and said that my hair twisted the way I have it now is the best hairstyle I've ever had.
All right.
White women, they fix their hair in ways where they can just get up and go. Mm-hmm. And twisting doesn't do that for them. But whatever way works for a woman to be able to get up and move, we need to be left alone.
Absolutely. Matt.
So there's been another issue that we were talking about over the break, and it's something that a lot of people don't realize is happening, especially in this country, is sex trafficking. And I understand that you have a bill coming out soon talking about this issue that could be happening in your hometown in Middle America. It's a surprising issue. If you want to talk a little bit about that.
Couple of things. We had this huge story yesterday about these young women in Nigeria captured, kidnapped, perhaps sold off into human trafficking. And people think that, that only happens over there. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, Milwaukee, Wisconsin is so shocking. is a feeder city for places like Las Vegas. And you mentioned Iowa. We have 100,000 girls sold into human trafficking, sex slavery a year in this country. And the thing that's so pernicious about this is that unlike drugs or some other stolen commodity, jewels or something, you can sell human beings over and over and over and over and over again. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And what my bill does, and it's a bipartisan bill with Representative Paulson, is to provide safe harbors for these girls. They're not even women. They're 12 to 14 years old that are sold into sex trafficking. To instead of treating them like criminals, like prostitutes who get fingerprinted and thrown in jail, to give them a safe harbor so that they, in fact, can be treated like the victims that they are, and given some opportunities through Job Corps and other resources to get their lives together.
I had no idea that problem existed in this country. I don't think most people do, Congresswoman. So you're out in front on that issue, fighting the good fight like you are on so many issues. Thank you for all your good work. Thanks for coming in this morning. And now you know where we are. We'll see you again soon, I hope.
All right. Well, thank you.
All right. Congresswoman Gwen Moore.
Nice to meet you too, Matt.
Matt Vasily-Gambros.
That's all for AmericasDemocrats.org. Thank you to all who made today's show possible. Peter Singer, Ed Kilgore, and the entire Bill Press team. And thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, please get involved in our efforts to keep this show going and to elect Democrats who are bringing the party back to its roots. Go to AmericasDemocrats.org and click on Donate at the top of the page. And be sure to find 21st Century Democrats on Facebook. For AmericasDemocrats.org, I'm your host, Jim Cuddy. We want you to sit back and listen, but we need you to stand up and fight. Join us, support the show, and help elect Democrats who will stand up for democratic principles with your contribution today. Go to AmericasDemocrats.org and click on Donate.